Now, I've really given it some thought this past summer. We've had 2 months off of no sense hockey. Steve Stais has made some good, solid moves to shore up the depth and the overall impact of this team, but I still can't contain myself from having any excitement heading into this upcoming season. There still could be some changes, right? I could potentially see the team adding some depth players here there for the fourth line, maybe a third pair D, but overall, this team is pretty set. Now, I was 15, 16 years of age when the last time the Ottawa Senators made the Stanley Cup finals, and I just turned 23 a month ago. I have seen life pass on. I have gone from a really awkward teenager to, I think I'm pretty content right now, but I have gone through a vast majority of my life cheering for this hockey team without having seen any playoff games. It's like cheering for a team in a different league. And then once the playoffs come on, you're cheering for something completely different. Which is why heading into this season, I am obviously going to watch every game. I am obviously going to watch every game on the West Coast, on the East Coast, whether it's a Sunday at 6:30, whether it's a game in Europe, which thank God they're not going to have this year. Everything in the organization part of it, at least from an ownership perspective, looks pretty good. Michael Andlauer, solid guy. Steve Stais looks like he's a competent general manager. And there just seems to be some stability, but you know what? I still have no expectation. And I'll give you 3 reasons here. So number 1 is going to be the core has always known how to lose. Thomas Chabot, I think we all see him as like a 23-year-old. He is 27. He is 27 years of age. We are approaching midway through Thomas Chabot's contract, which he signed back in September of 2019 to an 8-year extension. Brady Tkachuk has been here for 6 seasons, and Brady Tkachuk has always seen losing in his entire being during an NHL player. Now, I am putting no blame on him because he gives it his all every single night. But the thing is about Tkachuk is that the power forward game, the true power forward game that he plays, does not always graduate into the 30s and be as effective as it is in your mid to late 20s. So who's to say that we're going to see point per game Tkachuk going forward? I'm not saying he won't be that, but it's possible. Drake Batherson has been a very solid addition to the Ottawa Senators, a very good top 6 forward. He was a beacon of hope during some very dark days in the 2019-2020 days. He is 26. Drake Batherson is 26 years of age. He's just getting his career started, but he should technically be in his prime right now at 26. Josh Norris. Now, it's so unfortunate what has happened because this is a great player. But Josh Norris is 25. He's not a kid anymore either. This is not a guy who's, an up-and-coming young player. This is a guy who should be playing today and be a good player in this league for many years to come. And then you look at Tim Stützle, Jake Sanderson. On the younger side, of course, these guys are 22 years of age, so they still have a long way to go. And there's, a year or 2, maybe 3 coming up where you could see some more development come into play. Tim Stützle he's awesome. I love the guy. He is the most dynamic player we've had maybe since, excluding Carlson, maybe Spezza. He's so fun to watch. And it was a down year for him last year. I think he will rebound. He has the competitive drive and has the elite skill to back it up. I think at his lowest, he's a point per game player going forward for the next 10 seasons. And then Jake Sanderson, 22 years of age, just turned that age this summer, is a fantastic top 4 defenseman, I would say right now, has the ability to become a top pair. We'll see where he is for his offensive longevity and his peak there. I'm not sure if he's ever going to be a point per game defenseman. That's not going to happen. But maybe 60 points one day, you could see it. But the point being is that this core has only seen losing. They got a taste of it. They got a taste of it, not this year, but last year when they were over 500. And they were points outside of the playoffs at one point. But they don't know how to win. They don't know how to get to the next step, get through those games, get the extra points in the standings. And that's not on them because for the longest time, they were the guys. There was no Mark Stones or Matt Duchene's to, be veterans that they could lean on going forward. Number two is the prospects. So the prospect pool is pretty light right now. And thank God we have Yakimchuk, but even before, it was not good. I think people are expecting sometimes like Zach Ostapchuk to come in and play a fourth line center role. I don't think that's a good idea if you want to get the most out of him for the long haul. You're best off sending him to the AHL, giving him top 6 minutes, and then next year bringing him into a bottom 6 role if you ever want him to become a solid third line scorer in this league. And I think Sens fans sometimes have such a low bar for prospects. They'll see a player that comes up from the AHL and they'll say, hey, he looks pretty good because he can skate. He doesn't make super terrible errors out there and like hits a couple guys. I'm not piling on Ostapchuk because he actually did fare pretty well and he was better than I thought. But going forward, you know what? Stick him in the AHL for a year, maybe even a year and a half, and then see where he is then. Because that's a guy who can become an NHL player for sure. But then Clevin, right? Like the upside, maybe he becomes a second pair D-man one day, but like is he going to be good for 82 games next year on the third pair? We'll see. And Angus Crookshank is the more filled out prospect, I would say. He's going to be 25 this fall. However, we don't know what the NHL upside is there. We know he has to compete every single night. He's pretty physical. He is a little bit undersized, but you know what? He's a good player out there. He has some skill, and I think he's probably defensively responsible to handle a fourth line role here. But there's no true upside there, right? Yakimchuk is obviously years away. And then it's just this continuing conversation of who are we going to pass? So Montreal, get out of the way. They're not making the playoffs, right? They're a couple of years away at least. They got some great pieces out there, and they're looking good. But right now, they're just in the stage where you let the young players play. That's where the Sens were 2 years ago. Detroit, Buffalo. I don't think Detroit's going to make the playoffs, but you know what? They were better than us last year by a landslide too. Buffalo, they're sort of doing the same thing as us, where they are adding less scoring and a little bit more veteran leadership, but I don't know what they're going to do next year. I'm not going to lie. I'm not super high on Buffalo, but with a lot of players growing like Jack Quinn and JJ Peterka and guys having rebounding years in Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, all these guys, there's a lot of upside there, but they're in the same boat as us, right? Because they never had that veteran to lean on, so all they've known is losing. And then you go through the top 4 teams in the Atlantic. The Tampa Bay Lightning. Jake Gensel is a better player than Steven Stamkos. I know it looks like it's a loss for the Tampa Bay Lightning because they've lost their team captain and identity for the last 15 years, but Jake Gensel is a better player. Andre Vasilevsky is going to be better than he was last year as well. They've lost Mikhail Sergachev, but honestly, in my opinion, one of the more overrated defensemen in the entire league. JJ Moser is a pretty good defenseman and won't hurt you in the top 4. Toronto, pretty safe bet to make the playoffs regardless. And are they going to be a wild card team? I don't think so. So they have Austin Matthews as their new captain, a new identity there. They've added some defense. Their defense is better than last year. Chris Tanev and Oliver Ekman-Larsson should, at least for now, be good, solid second pair D-man. And that's what Toronto has needed. The Boston Bruins, we have written them off every year to drop off, and they just don't do it. Now, of course, we took Allmark from them. That is great. But who's not to say that Jeremy Swayman can't play 60 games a year? Because this guy has been solid for his entire career and is backed up with a great top 4 in Boston. Plus, they added Elias Lindholm to help out the center core and Nikita Zadorov. And then you got the Florida Panthers, the Stanley Cup champions. Now, their defense did take a hit when you lose Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Brandon Montour. But the rest of their lineup is pretty much there, and the forwards are still the same. And they don't have a bunch of guys that are, in their mid to late 30s who are going to drop off. So Matthew Tkachuk is in his prime, Alexander Barkov's in his prime, Sam Reinhart's in his prime, Anton Lundell just signed a steal of a contract. And watch, they turn like Adam Boqvist into a 50, 60-point defenseman this year, right? So I don't see Florida falling off and outside the playoffs whatsoever. Right, so there's four teams there who noticeably did not take a step back, I don't think, in my opinion. And if the Ottawa Senators are somehow going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to jump at least one of those. We'll see, though. We will see. We still got a couple months left, and who knows? Maybe Steve Stais saw something that Pierre Dorian and the rest of the staff did not. And it's possible we make the playoffs next year, but it is very possible that we miss it and we are, 20th in the league or something. So, you know what? I'm pretty pessimistic going into this offseason, but I think I have a reason to be.